We are in a debt spiral. Unless you want to stop being the world reserve currency and get on a Bitcoin and/or gold standard, a neutral money standard, you have to bring rates down. You have to finance the US government at any and all costs. Bitcoin is going to 250K and then it's going to 1 million. They're going to have to print so much money, debase this currency so much. We are going to see so much inflation, especially in the scarce desirable goods, particularly Bitcoin. Bitcoin inflates the most. It performs the most. You guys have to understand what's happening. You have to. Interest rates are coming down not to juice the economy, not to solve for jobs. They're coming down because we as an empire are about to fail.
The United States is racing toward a financial cliff, and the signs are everywhere. The government's budget deficit hit a staggering $345 billion in just 1 month, pushing the annual shortfall toward $3 trillion. Even with tax revenues rising 12% and new tariffs adding income, spending is so out of control that the gap keeps widening. This isn't a temporary slump, it's a fundamental breakdown. The debt-to-GDP ratio, which briefly dipped only after the extreme measures of record inflation and zero interest rates, is now poised to soar again. The system and its lifeblood, the US dollar, is seriously bleeding. In a desperate move, the Federal Reserve is abandoning its traditional roles. The talk on Wall Street is all about a third mandate, a secret weapon to keep the government from collapsing. This mandate would force the Fed to control long-term interest rates, effectively printing money to cap bond yields and make borrowing cheaper for the Treasury. But this yield curve control is a poison pill. It means sacrificing the currency's value to save the state, leading to inflation that will erode savings and crush everyday people. The mainstream media calls it a political power grab. However, the truth is far darker. It's a survival mechanism for an empire in its final stages of decline. Amid this chaos, Bitcoin analyst Jack Mallers offers a stark perspective. He sees the recent market volatility not as a threat, but as a symptom of the larger disease. For Mallers, the Fed's actions are not about stimulating the economy. They are a last-ditch effort to avoid a debt spiral that would end the American financial system as we know it. The third mandate is the confirmation that the rules have changed, and Bitcoin is the only honest gauge left. Let's bring you more clips from Jack Mallers' sharp market analysis to gain more insight. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for more in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the rest of the video.
This is about survival. This is about the United States has no choice. We are in a debt spiral. Unless you want to stop being the world reserve currency and get on a Bitcoin and/or gold standard, a neutral money standard, you have to bring rates down. You have to finance the US government at any and all costs. And the notion that Bloomberg and economists and bond portfolio managers think that this is about politics, they have no idea what is coming. We move on. Again, guys, what do you want to cut? In the wake of all this societal divide, political violence that we're all experiencing, you want to cut human and health services? You want to cut Social Security? You want to cut defense? And by the way, cut them now, today, by 25% and permanently. And then we might have a chance, although that probably will cause a recession and for us to collapse anyway. Or else you cut your treasury expense. You cut rates. And the third mandate is simple. What Myron is proposing, Trump's pick for the Fed, what this new Fed is proposing is they want to control both the front end, so interest rates, and the long end. What this means, what is yield curve control? Yield curve control is if the 10-year goes higher than a number, let's say 2%, 3%, we will print unlimited money and buy it until it goes down. That is yield curve control, controlling the yield curve by printing money out of thin air. So we go on. The US dollar is having its worst year in decades. This is from the Financial Times. Guys, again, this people look at this and they say, oh, it's because the tariffs. Oh, it's because Trump's a dictator. Oh, it's because Kamala Harris or blah, blah. It's because the left. It's because the right. It's because this. No. This has to happen. This is math. Guys, printing paper out of thin air to consume real stuff isn't a sustainable system. It's failing. The escape valve is the currency. The escape valve is inflation. It is the only way out. And we've talked about this before. The United States dollar used to be backed by the US military. Oh, you don't like this system? Well, let's see if you change your mind if we put a weapon in between your eyes and threaten to blow the trigger and blow your brains out. Now, do you like the US dollar? That used to work. That no longer works because we've talked about on this show. Globalism and exporting everything in an effort to be the world reserve currency has even exported the US military itself. We can't produce rare earths. We cannot produce what our military needs to sustain war. So the US dollar is no longer backed by the US military. We no longer have the threat of physical power. We've talked about that on this show. So you have to understand what is happening. Do not get blinded by the mainstream media. Do not get baited into these rhetorics. The truth is very simple. The escape valve is the currency. The escape valve is inflation. It is our only way out. The fact that the US dollar is having its worst year in decades is no accident, guys. With Fed board member Myron now confirmed, the mainstream media is preparing the world for the Fed's third mandate, which is essentially yield curve control. Let's fucking go. Yield curve control to Bitcoin equals 1 million. And I agree with him. Bitcoin is going to 250K and then it's going to 1 million. They're going to have to print so much money, debase this currency so much. We are going to see so much inflation, especially in the scarce desirable goods, particularly Bitcoin. Bitcoin inflates the most. It performs the most. You guys have to understand what's happening. You have to. Interest rates are coming down not to juice the economy, not to solve for jobs. They're coming down because we as an empire are about to fail. The Fed is coming out with a third mandate that gives them some control over the long end as well. So now they set rates at the short end and the long end. That's yield curve control. That's real rates negative. That's financial repression against bondholders. Look at our gross federal debt as a percentage of GDP. Look, been this high before. When? During the world wars. How did we bring debt to GDP from 120% down to 30%? Financial repression. Bondholders got smoked. Do you understand? Like, it's very obvious. We've lived through this. And the fact that Bloomberg, it also underscores how willing Trump is to upend decades of institutional norms to break down the Fed's longstanding independence and service for his own goals. That was written by a bond portfolio manager. Good game. Hey, listen, man. You can cry and pay to have articles written in Bloomberg, or you can sell your bonds and buy some Bitcoin. The choice is yours. Get you some sats in cold storage and prosper, or have fun staying poor. I don't know what to say. And people say, oh, Jack, he's a tyrant. He curses. He's so aggressive. I'm sorry. I'm committed to the truth. I'm not committed to the left, the right, the up, the down. You guys can count on me every single week to be honest, to be truthful. I'm not anti-American. I'm not anti-left. I'm not anti-right. I'm pro-truth. Find me a place on the internet that's going to spit it to you straight. Whether you like it or not, I call it how I see it. They are in survival mode at the expense of you listening to this. You have to take care of yourself and your family. You have to exit. It sounds dramatic because it is.
Jack Mallers breaks it down in simple terms. He says the pressure on Bitcoin came when the Treasury refilled its account. To do that, the government borrowed from the market, pulling money out of the system. That made assets feel heavy, and prices dipped. For many, it appeared to be a weakness, but Maller calls it a strength. Bitcoin was reacting to real flows of money, not empty bets, and that shows it is maturing. Once the Treasury spends that cash back into the economy, liquidity returns, and Bitcoin rises again. But the real shift comes with the third mandate. Yield curve control means the Fed will not allow long-term rates to climb. And the only way to hold them down is to print more dollars. That helps Washington borrow, but it crushes the value of money in people's pockets. According to Maller, this is the moment where scarce assets become survival tools. This is the setup for Bitcoin to climb past $250,000 and higher. Every new dollar printed makes Bitcoin stronger, because it is the one path out of the trap. The system is closing in, and Bitcoin is the exit sign flashing brighter each day. Let's watch more clips.
That brings me to the last one, the collapse of the middle class, a generation squeezed. This has been a personal passion of mine. A lot of new data has come out just about how decimated the middle class has gotten and how bad it is. And I wanted to walk through in some detail and spend some time here. So this is from Bloomberg. Top 10% of earners drive a growing share of U.S. consumer spending. And in the image here, this is a photo from Beverly Hills. And you've got a beautiful Rolls Royce on the left. And like, what is that? A Nissan driving on the right. And it really visualizes the division within the economy at large that we've talked about a lot on this show. So this from Joe, key chart. Consumers in the top 10% of the income distribution accounted for 49.2% of total spending in the second quarter, up from 48.5% in the first quarter, reaching the highest level in data going back to 1989. Guys, I'm going to read that again. Consumers in the top 10% account for half of the total spending. The top 10% spend half the money. Are you kidding me? Look at this from bar chart. The top 1% of U.S. earners now have more money than the entire middle class. I'm going to say that again. The top 1% in the United States have more wealth than the entire middle class. Help with mortgage. The Google search is higher today than it was in 2008 financial crisis. I'm going to say that again. Getting help with your mortgage, that search on the internet, is more popular today than in the 2008 financial crisis. Please pay attention to this tweet from Lance Lambert. If the U.S. income spiked 60%, we'd return to pre-pandemic housing affordability. If U.S. home prices fell 38%, we'd return to pre-pandemic housing affordability. If mortgage rates fell 4.15%, we'd return to pre-pandemic affordability. Let me put it to you guys in plain speak, in Jack language. Houses are not going to become affordable anytime soon. Get f***ed. Unless you get a 60% raise, unless the house you want drops in half in price, or unless mortgage rates fall over 4%, you're not getting a house. And that goes for not just the majority of America, the overwhelming majority of America. Home payments in Los Angeles are 90% of median household income. Are you kidding me? Average tax wages and salaries by household income. Look at the higher upper class versus the lower in the middle. And the idea that we even have a middle class is bullshit. There is no middle class. You're either benefiting from this system or you're not. Fiat, the US dollar, has decimated the middle class. There is no middle class. We've evaporated the middle class. The heart and soul of this country is gone. It's been exported to China. You're either a financier in California, in New York, or you're poor. And not to the fault of your own. Not because you don't work hard, not because you cheat and lie and steal, not because you aren't dedicated to morals and principles and a prosperous living, not because You don't want to create family and you want to be scandalous running around committing crime. For none of those reasons. Because of the system. Because of the currency. Because the money is broken. That's why. We all have to understand what is involved in a fourth turning. What is involved in the fall of an empire? What comes with Bitcoin's success? This is all a result of choices we've made. You want a divorce from the gold standard? You want to print unlimited money? You want to export jobs? Export our health? Export our currency? Export our families? This is what you get. You burden a generation that has no chance. We are living through a fourth turning. We are living through the fall of an empire, a monetary regime change. We are moving back to neutral reserve assets. The only way out is through the currency, is through inflation, is through a division in the wealth gap, is through financial repression, is through theft from the middle and lower class, is through theft from future generations. You have to get Bitcoin. You have to get your kids Bitcoin. Your kids have to understand Bitcoin and save in Bitcoin. It is, to my knowledge, the only peaceful way out.
Now, the human cost of these policies is already visible. The richest 10% of Americans now account for half of all spending, while the top 1% own more wealth than the entire middle class combined. Housing has slipped out of reach, requiring either a 60% rise in incomes or a near 40% collapse in prices just to return to pre-pandemic levels. For younger generations, the crisis is brutal. Graduate jobs are declining, unemployment is rising among degree holders, and the spread of artificial intelligence is eroding white-collar work. A white-collar recession is unfolding, much like the blue-collar collapse of the 1980s, and it is leaving an entire generation feeling unwanted, trapped, and angry. This despair is bleeding into society. Rates of suicide, violence, and unrest are climbing toward levels not seen since the Civil War. Every headline about political violence or assassinations is a symptom of the same disease. Fiat money has drained the middle class and shifted power to a small elite, leaving millions of people with no path forward. The third mandate, yield curve control, and endless borrowing are not abstract policies. They are weapons turned inward, aimed at the very people the system claims to serve. Jack Mallers does not frame Bitcoin as a get-rich-quick tool. He frames it as a shield, a lifeboat, a chance for families to protect themselves against a monetary order that has chosen survival over justice. Bitcoin, built on code rather than promises, enables people to save without fear of inflation or theft. It offers a peaceful exit when politics and policy only lead to more chaos. His message carries weight because it cuts beyond charts and numbers. It speaks to the reality of broken lives and broken trust. We are witnessing a regime change in money, one that will not be painless and will not be quick. However, for those who understand, Bitcoin offers a way out, a means to hold on to hope while the old system crumbles. It is not just an investment, it is a vote for a future where money is fair and freedom remains meaningful. The spiral is tightening, and the third mandate proves it. But in the middle of the storm, Bitcoin stands as the one true anchor. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.